Picture this. You're sitting in the back of your old man's Holden, pulling up to the local milk bar with a couple of dollars jingling in your pocket. The smell of hot oil and fried food hits you before you even open the car door. Behind that glass counter, under those heat lamps, sits something that doesn't exist anymore. Not a variation of it, not a modern version, gone. Australia in the 1970s and 80s had fast food that shaped a generation, treats and meals so iconic they became part of our identity. And then, overnight, they vanished. Today, we're diving into 15 forgotten Australian fast foods that disappeared completely. Not evolved, not rebranded, gone. These weren't just snacks and meals. They were rituals, rewards, childhood memories wrapped in grease-proof paper and served with a smile. Some vanished due to changing tastes, others because companies merged or went bust, but they all left a hole that nothing's quite filled since. Let's remember what we've lost, one bite at a time. Chiko roll, the iconic Aussie snack. The Chiko roll technically still exists, but let's be honest, when was the last time you actually saw one? Back in the 1970s and the 80s, the Chiko roll was everywhere. At footy matches, the local takeaway, servo pie warmers, and school canteens. It was Australia's answer to the spring roll, but bigger, greasier, and designed to be eaten with one hand while you held a beer in the other. You would bite through that thick, crunchy pastry shell and hit a scalding hot mix of cabbage, barley, beef, and vegetables. It was dense, filling, and tasted like nothing else. The Chiko roll was not trying to be healthy or gourmet. It was designed for blokes at the football who needed something substantial without a plate or cutlery. It worked. Created in 1951 in Bendigo, the Chiko roll became a cultural icon. By the 70s, it was selling millions every year. You would see the ads on telly, always featuring someone at the footy, always positioning it as the ultimate Aussie feed. And it was. Kids loved them, adults relied on them, and for decades the Chiko roll was as Australian as meat pies and sausage rolls. But by the 2000s, tastes changed. Health concerns kicked in, fast food options exploded, and the Chiko roll started to feel outdated. Stores stopped stocking them, warmers went cold, and slowly the Chiko roll faded into obscurity. You can still find them if you look hard enough, usually in regional servos or nostalgic takeaways, but the glory days, when every kid knew what a Chiko roll was, those are gone. For those who grew up with them, the Chiko roll was not just food, it was part of the experience, part of being Australian, and nothing today tastes quite the same. 4 and 20 traveller pies. 4 and 20 pies are still around, sure, but the traveller is a different story. Back in the 80s and 90s, the traveller was the king of service station pies. Bigger than a standard pie, wrapped in that iconic foil sleeve, designed specifically for eating on the road. You would stop at a servo on a long drive, grab a traveller from the warmer, squirt on some tomato sauce, and eat it while leaning against the car, watching the highway stretch into the distance. The traveller was not fancy. It was meat, gravy, and pastry, simple and satisfying. But it was perfectly designed for its purpose. The foil wrapper meant you did not burn your hands. The size meant it actually filled you up. And the price, usually a couple of bucks, made it accessible to everyone. Road trips in the 80s and 90s were defined by those traveller pies. Families driving interstate, truckies hauling freight, travellers heading bush, everyone stopped for a traveller. It was not just fuel for the car, it was fuel for you. The servo pie became a ritual, a break in the journey, a moment to stretch your legs and refuel. But somewhere in the 2000s, the traveller disappeared. 4 and 20 shifted focus, servos changed their food offerings, and the traveller quietly vanished from warmers across the country. You can still get 4 and 20 pies, but they are not the same. The traveller had a presence, a purpose. It belonged to the open road. For those who remember stopping at the servo and grabbing a traveller, the memory is tied to something bigger. Freedom, adventure, the feeling of going somewhere. That pie was not just food, it was part of the journey. Sunny Boy ice blocks. If you grew up in Australia before the 2000s, you knew Sunny Boy. that bright orange pyramid of frozen citrus ice, wrapped in plastic, sold at every milk bar, corner store, and school canteen. On a scorching summer arvo, nothing hit quite like a Sunny Boy. You would tear open the plastic, suck on the corner until your lips went numb, and by the time you finished, your hands were sticky and your tongue was orange. Sunny Boy was not fancy, it was frozen cordial, essentially, shaped into a tetrahedron and marketed to kids. But it was cheap, refreshing, and became a summer staple for generations. You would see kids at the pool, at the park, walking home from school, all clutching their Sunny Boys. It was part of the Australian summer experience. The flavour was simple, citrus and sweet, but there was something about the texture, the way it froze, the way you had to work for every bit of icy goodness that made it special. And at around 50 cents, every kid could afford one. You did not need your parents' money. You could scrape together enough coins from the couch cushions and walk to the shop yourself. But by the early 2000s, Sunny Boys started disappearing. Production slowed, stores stopped stocking them, and eventually they were gone. There were brief comebacks, limited releases, nostalgic reissues, but they never stuck. The Sunny Boy as we knew it, the one that dominated Australian childhoods for decades, is finished. For those who remember, the Sunny Boy represented something pure. Simple pleasure, hot days, cold treats, and the freedom of being a kid with a few coins and the whole afternoon ahead. You cannot get that back. Pizza Haven, the original Aussie pizza chain. Before Domino's and Pizza Hut dominated the landscape, there was Pizza Haven. If you were a kid in the 80s or the 90s, Pizza Haven was where you went for birthdays, team celebrations, or just a Friday night treat. The red and white branding, the smell of baking dough, the excitement of choosing your own toppings, it was an event. Pizza Haven started in Western Australia in 1982 and expanded quickly. By the 90s, there were stores across the country. The pizzas were good, generous toppings, crispy bases, and they had deals that made feeding a family affordable. You would call ahead, order a couple of large pizzas, and drive over to pick them up. The boxes were still warm when you got home, and everyone would dive in, fighting over the last slice. But Pizza Haven also had dine-in restaurants, and that is where the magic happened. You would sit in those booths, watch them make the pizzas through the kitchen window, and feel like you were somewhere special. The salad bar, the garlic bread, the soft drink refills, it was everything a kid wanted. By the late 90s, the pizza wars intensified. Domino's and Pizza Hut had bigger budgets, faster delivery, aggressive marketing. Pizza Haven could not compete. Stores started closing, the brand was sold, rebranded, absorbed. By 2008, Pizza Haven was completely gone. The last stores shut their doors, and just like that, an Australian original vanished. For those who grew up with Pizza Haven, it represented something beyond pizza. It was community, celebration, the reward for a good week at school or a win on the footy field. And when it disappeared, another piece of childhood went with it. Clag chocolate. This one is a bit niche, but if you know, you know. Clag chocolate was not a major brand, but it was a fixture at school fetes, fundraisers, and local events through the 70s and the 80s. They were small, individually wrapped chocolate squares, cheap as chips, sold by volunteers raising money for the school or the local footy club. The chocolate itself was nothing special, just standard milk chocolate, but it was the ritual around it that mattered. You would buy a handful with your pocket money, share them with mates, trade them for other treats. It was low stakes, accessible, and everywhere. By the 90s, Clag chocolate had disappeared. Bigger brands like Cadbury and Nestle dominated the market, and small-scale producers could not compete. Fundraisers switched to Freddo Frogs and Cherry Ripes, and Clag chocolate faded into a forgotten memory. For those who remember buying Clag at the school fete, it is tied to something bigger, community events, the excitement of the fete, the thrill of having a few coins to spend. It was not really about the chocolate. It was about belonging. Street's Paddle Pop Rainbow. Paddle Pops are still around, but the Rainbow, that is a different story. In the 80s and the 90s, the Paddle Pop Rainbow was the pinnacle of ice cream achievement. Multiple flavors layered into one frozen stick. Caramel, strawberry, chocolate, vanilla, all swirled together in psychedelic stripes. You would peel back the wrapper, and there it was, a rainbow of frozen joy. Kids went crazy for them. The variety, the colors, the fact that every bite was different made the rainbow feel special. You would buy one from the ice cream van, the canteen, or the corner store, and for $1 or $2, you had happiness on a stick. But at some point, the rainbow vanished. Streets simplified their range, focused on the classics, and the rainbow was quietly discontinued. You can still get paddle pops, sure, but they are single flavor now. The magic of the rainbow, the surprise of never knowing which flavor you would hit next, is gone. For those who remember, the paddle pop rainbow represented childhood summers. Running to the ice cream van, sticky fingers, melted ice cream dripping down your hand. Simple, pure, perfect, and irreplaceable. Red Rooster's Big Rooster Roll. Red Rooster is still around, hanging on in a fast food landscape dominated by KFC and McDonald's. But the Big Rooster Roll, that's history. Back in the 80s and 90s, the Big Rooster Roll was Red Rooster's signature item. A massive roll stuffed with roast chicken, stuffing, gravy, and coleslaw. It was messy, delicious, and required 2 hands and a bunch of napkins. You would bite into it and the gravy would drip everywhere. The stuffing would fall out, but it did not matter. It tasted incredible. The combination of tender chicken, savory stuffing, and creamy coleslaw wrapped in a soft roll was unbeatable. It was a meal, not just a snack. Red Rooster positioned the Big Rooster Roll as their answer to the burger wars. While McDonald's and KFC pushed burgers and fried chicken, Red Rooster focused on roast chicken, and the Big Rooster Roll was the hero product. For a while, it worked. People loved it. But by the 2000s, tastes shifted. Fast food became faster, cleaner, less messy. The Big Rooster Roll, with all its gravy and chaos, felt outdated. Red Rooster simplified their menu, the Big Rooster Roll disappeared, and with it, a piece of what made Red Rooster unique. For those who remember ordering a Big Rooster Roll, it is tied to a specific time. Family dinners, footy nights, the smell of roast chicken filling the car on the way home. That roll was not just food, it was an experience. Number 8, Sizzler's all-you-can-eat cheese bread. Sizzler is gone from most of Australia now, but in the 1990s it was the place to go for a fancy family dinner. The salad bar was legendary, but the real star was the cheese bread. Warm, toasted bread slathered in melted cheese and garlic butter, served unlimited. You could eat as much as you wanted, and people did. Kids would load up on cheese bread before even touching the salad bar. Adults would sneak back for thirds, fourths, fifths. It was indulgent, glorious, and completely over the top. The bread was soft, the cheese was gooey, and the garlic butter soaked through every layer. It was perfection. Sizzler was a treat. You did not go there every week. It was birthdays, celebrations, special occasions. And the all-you-can-eat cheese bread was part of the appeal. You felt like you were getting your money's worth, filling up on something delicious before the main meal even arrived. But by the early 2000s, Sizzler struggled. Competition increased, tastes changed, and one by one, stores closed. By 2020, Sizzler was gone from the Australian East Coast entirely. The salad bar, the cheese bread, the whole experience was finished. For those who remember going to Sizzler, the cheese bread is the memory that sticks. That first bite, warm and cheesy, the thrill of knowing you could have as much as you wanted. It represented abundance, celebration, a time when eating out felt special, and now it is gone. Number 9, Bertie Beetle from the show bag. Every kid who went to the Royal Show in the 80s and 90s knew Bertie Beetle. That little chocolate beetle had crunchy honeycomb inside, it was wrapped in bright foil, and it was packed into the Nestle show bag. For a few bucks, you would get a bag full of treats, but Bertie Beetle was always the highlight. The chocolate was standard Nestle milk chocolate, but the honeycomb gave it texture, crunch, and something different. And the packaging, that shiny foil beetle, made it feel special. You would collect them, trade them with mates, and hoard them for weeks after the show ended. Bertie Beetle was not sold in shops. You could not buy it at the supermarket or the milk bar. It was exclusive to the show bag, which made it even more desirable. Every year, kids would beg their parents for the Nestle show bag, and every year Bertie Beetle delivered. But at some point, Bertie Beetle changed. The recipe shifted, the size shrank, and it stopped feeling special. By the 2000s, it was still in the show bag, but the magic was gone. Kids moved on to other treats, and Bertie Beetle became a relic. For those who remember, Bertie Beetle represented the royal show. The rides, the animals, the show bags full of treasures. That little chocolate beetle was part of the experience, part of the excitement, and nothing today captures that same feeling. Kentucky Fried Chicken's original potato scallops. Before KFC switched to chips and wedges, they sold potato scallops. Thick slices of potato, deep fried in the same oil as the chicken, crispy on the outside, soft on the inside, and tasting faintly of the Colonel's secret herbs and spices. They were incredible. You would order a feet of chicken, and the scallops would come in a little cardboard box, greasy, hot, perfect. Kids loved them, adults loved them. They were simple, unpretentious, and delicious. And they were cheap. You could add them to any order without breaking the bank. But in the early 2000s, KFC overhauled their menu. Out went the scallops, and in came chips and potato with gravy. The scallops disappeared overnight, and people were devastated. There were petitions, complaints, pleas to bring them back. But KFC never budged. For those who remember, KFC scallops were part of the ritual. Friday night family dinners, birthday parties, the smell of fried chicken and potatoes filling the house. The scallops were not fancy, but they were ours. And when they vanished, something irreplaceable went with them. Hungry Jack's Yumbo. The Yumbo was Hungry Jack's attempt at a hot ham and cheese burger. Launched in the 90s, it was simple: ham, cheese, lettuce, tomato, mayonnaise, and a toasted bun. Nothing fancy, but it worked. The toasted bun gave it texture, the ham was salty, the cheese melted perfectly, and for a few dollars you had a satisfying meal. The Yumbo wasn't trying to compete with the Whopper. It was its own thing, lighter, simpler, designed for people who didn't want a massive beef burger. And for a while, it had a loyal following. People loved the toasted bun, the simplicity, and the fact that it was different. By the early 2000s, the Yumbo disappeared. Hungry Jack's focused on their core menu, beef burgers and chicken, and the Yumbo was quietly discontinued. For years, it was forgotten. Then, in 2019, Hungry Jack's brought it back for a limited time. Nostalgia hit, people rushed to try it, and it sold out almost immediately. But the re-release didn't last. The Yumbo came back briefly, then disappeared again. For those who remember the original, the Yumbo represented something different. An alternative, a lighter option, a burger that didn't take itself too seriously. And when it vanished, another choice disappeared with it. The golden Gaytime is still around, but it is not the same. The original version, with its paper wrapper and a wooden stick, is gone. Back in the 80s and 90s, unwrapping a golden Gaytime was an experience. You would peel back that paper carefully, trying not to rip the toffee coating, and reveal layers of vanilla ice cream, chocolate and honeycomb biscuit crumbs. The wooden stick gave it character. It was not plastic, it was not fancy, it was just wood. When you finished, you would chew on the stick, tasting the last remnants of ice cream and toffee. Kids did it, adults did it. It was part of the ritual. But streets changed the packaging. Paper became plastic, wooden sticks became branded plastic sticks, and something was lost. The golden Gaytime still tastes good, sure, but it does not feel the same. The unwrapping, the texture, the simplicity are gone. For those who remember the original, it is tied to summers at the pool, the ice cream van, sticky fingers, and wooden sticks. It represented a time when treats were simple, uncomplicated, real. That version, the one we grew up with, is finished. McDonald's pizza. McPizza. Yes, McDonald's sold pizza. In the early 90s, Macca's experimented with pizza in select Australian stores. The McPizza came in a few varieties: cheese, pepperoni, and deluxe. It was cooked in special ovens installed specifically for this menu item. For a fast food chain known for burgers, it was a bold move. The McPizza was not bad. It was thin crust with decent toppings, hot and cheesy. But it did not fit the McDonald's model. It took longer to make than a burger, required specialised equipment, and it did not move fast enough. Fast food is about speed, and the McPizza slowed everything down. By the mid-90s, the McPizza experiment ended. Ovens were removed, the menu item disappeared, and McDonald's went back to what they did best: burgers and fries. Most Australians never even knew it existed. For those who tried the McPizza, it is a bizarre memory. McDonald's, the Burger King, selling pizza. It felt wrong, almost surreal, but it was real. And for a brief moment, you could order a McPizza with your Big Mac, and then just like that, it was gone. Arnot's snackabouts biscuits. Snackabouts were Arnot's attempt at a savoury snack biscuit. Launched in the 80s, they came in flavours like cheese, barbecue, and chicken. They were small, crunchy crackers designed for lunchboxes and afternoon snacks. Kids loved them. They were salty, flavourful, and easy to eat by the handful. The packaging was simple, small boxes that fit perfectly in school bags. You would see them in canteens, at the supermarket, in every kid's lunchbox. They were not as popular as shapes, but they had their place. By the 90s, snackabouts disappeared. Arnott's consolidated their range, shapes dominated the market, and snackabouts were quietly discontinued. No fanfare, no announcement, just gone. For those who remember, snackabouts were part of the routine. School lunches, footy trips, afternoons in front of the telly. They were not fancy, but they were reliable. And when they vanished, another small piece of childhood disappeared with them. Mr. Donut. Before Krispy Kreme and Donut King, before every servo had a bakery section selling sad, pre-packaged donuts, there was Mr. Donut. If you grew up in the 70s or 80s, you knew the logo, that cheerful little chef character holding a donut, the bright orange and brown branding that screamed American optimism. The chain started in the United States but expanded to Australia, and for a while it was everywhere. Shopping centres, main streets, places where families would stop for a treat after doing the weekly shop or finishing errands on a Saturday arvo. Walking into a Mr. Donut was an experience. The smell hit you first, that intoxicating combination of hot oil, sugar, and fresh dough. You would see the donuts behind glass, rotating slowly on those illuminated racks, golden and perfect. Glazed donuts still warm, chocolate-topped ones with sprinkles, jam-filled classics oozing red filling, cinnamon sugar dusted so thick it coated your fingers. Everything was made fresh, right there in the store. You could watch them fry the dough, glaze them, decorate them. It felt special, like you were getting something real, something made with care. The staff wore those branded uniforms, caps and aprons, and they would greet you with a smile, ask what you wanted, box it up in those iconic white and orange boxes. You could buy singles, half dozens, full dozens. For a few bucks, you would walk out with a box of warm donuts that would barely make it home before someone opened the lid and grabbed one. The car would smell like sugar the whole drive, and by the time you pulled into the driveway, half the box was already gone. Mr. Donut was not trying to be gourmet. They sold classic flavours, the kind your grandparents would recognise. Glazed, chocolate, custard-filled, plain cinnamon. Nothing fancy, nothing pretentious. Just honest, delicious donuts that tasted like comfort. Kids loved them. Parents loved them. They were affordable, accessible, and everywhere. But Mr. Donut also represented something bigger. It was American, exotic, a taste of that overseas world Australians saw on television but could not always access. In the 70s and 80s, American brands were still novel, still exciting. Having a Mr. Donut in your suburb felt like progress, like your town was keeping up with the rest of the world. It was not just about donuts, it was about belonging to something bigger. By the 90s, things started changing. Competition intensified. Donut King launched and positioned itself as a more modern, Australian alternative. They had flashier marketing, more locations, better positioning in shopping centres. Mr. Donut could not keep up. One by one, stores started closing. The bright signs came down, the donut racks went dark, and slowly, Mr. Donut disappeared from Australian streets. By the early 2000s, they were completely gone. Krispy Kreme arrived soon after, bringing their own version of American donut culture with the hot light and the conveyor belt spectacle. But it was not the same. Krispy Kreme was corporate, polished, global. Mr. Donut had been personal, local, ours. For those who remember walking into a Mr. Donut on a Saturday afternoon, the memory is tied to something deeper. Family outings, the treat after a long week, the smell of sugar and possibility. Those donuts were not just food, they were rewards, celebrations, small moments of joy in ordinary life. And when Mr. Donut disappeared, it took those moments with it. Now we have donuts everywhere, supermarkets, servos, chains with gimmicks and marketing. But none of them taste quite like Mr. Donut did. None of them feel the same.